Welcome back to the Business Simple podcast. It's your host, James. I'm really excited. I have Casey Curtis, the founder of CA Architecture, with me. She has the pink power suit on. We're breaking the glass ceiling. We've been really, really looking to have a female guest on the show for a long time. Casey's awesome, and I'm extremely glad it's you. Casey and CA Architecture are a client of ours. We do work with them. You guys have had some really cool content released recently that's had a really good response online, which has been cool. You've worked on a number of awesome projects. Some of the ones that I've noted down here are the Huntsbury Residence, K-House, and the Extreme Man Cave, which is probably the one that stands out to me. And one of the only female-led architecture firms that we've stumbled across. And you do what you do in an exceptional way. I'm really excited to be able to share your story with people and things like that. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute
Excited
pleasure.
to be here.
I'm pleased. Right. So as we kind of talked about, the first thing that we tend to sort of go through with most of our guests is their journey from where they started to where they are now. And CA Architecture has done a whole lot of growing. It's obviously been through, as with all of the clients that we've had on here that have had some involvement in the property industry, probably some highs and lows over the last couple of years. Can you take me back to the beginning in terms of how this journey all started for you, what inspired you to want to go out and do your own thing, and what that process was like?
Yeah, awesome. It's been in business about 10 years now. It started off... I was working at a group housing company for the first 5 years of my career, and I only really left there to have my daughter, who's now 10, and pretty much started contracting back to them when she was just a wee tot from home. So pretty much just from the get-go at that point, kind of sole trader, had to incorporate a business to do that work. And then I did that for a couple of years before we had to go down to one income for some health reasons. So, shit, okay, can't just be a sole trader anymore. What are we going to do? So launched, back then it was called Curtis Architecture. And I knew that by then I had 2 children, and that I couldn't work full-time in a business, but I had to bring in a full-time income / cover the household expenses for 4 of us. So right from day one, I actually had an employee work for me from day one in the house. Luckily, She was a friend. I studied with her and we worked together at the housing company. So we already had a bit of a relationship, and I felt safe and comfortable having her in my home. Yeah. So that was really interesting, just working 20 hours a week as I could around family life and trying to see if I could get some invoices in to cover the mortgage and to live. So it was very much I wouldn't say... part of me thinks I was like maybe a little bit in a scarcity mindset then too, of like, I've got to do this to be able to provide for the family. But then I think that pushed me to make it work and to really grow and to build our connections and our relationships with people to actually get some work. So to really kind of start putting myself out there to drum up some work and provide for the family. It's
a good, the scarcity mindset thing, it's interesting you bring that up so much, but like it can be your worst enemy, but also your biggest helper at times, and it's really give or take. I find that sometimes business feels a little bit like you're playing on hard mode, and then it switches to like you're playing on easy mode really quickly, and it's often just like I think it becomes really interesting when people are focused, say, like solely on money. And I think that often those people, I tend to find at least that I've come across, they don't really tend to have any of it very often. Whereas the people who are like mission driven, and that mission could be anything, it could be providing for the family, or it could be, which involves money, but it's not actually so much about the money. That's why they tend to be the people that can get ahead a little bit faster.
Yeah, so I definitely think initially it was all about the money. It was, there's a need, I need to make that happen, so what do I need to do to get that money to come in? And then I guess once that started flowing and things were a little bit easier and I was able to cover the bills, then I was able to really start thinking about passion piece, because I jumped straight from working full-time to having children to still working from home while raising the children. So I didn't really have, and I was also still so young, so I didn't really have the time to really get into what my mission and what my passions actually were within architecture until the business was a couple of years old, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And how did you find that experience with you mentioned having the first employee straight at the start is obviously not how most architecture firms or really any businesses go. How did you find that, and how did you handle, because obviously that's not just the pressure of providing for your household, but also for theirs in part as well.
Yeah, exactly. It was bloody scary.
Yeah.
But I knew it was a necessity, and I had to focus on bringing the work in, but I had to get it done. I couldn't just sell some architecture and some design work and then only be able to work on it 20 hours a week. And I knew that my 20 hours a week was not going to cover household expenses. So it was a bit of a chicken and egg, and it pushed me to a must do. Luckily at the time, had a bit of a drawdown facility on the mortgage, so had a little bit of scope creep in terms of we could focus on paying that staff member first, and then whatever was left over and build from there. So I guess it kind of shaped our household expenses in a way that could enable us to just jump in and get an employee straight away.
Nice.
And I guess that was the best thing we ever did. But it was yeah. I always get told I'm crazy. I always get told what are you doing? Why are you doing so many things? How do you make this work? What? I get that all the time, even now. So back then it was, I think I was 26 when I did that. So it was very much, people look at me pretty strange and think I'm a bit nuts. Yeah. But here we are.
It's one thing that, through our dealings, and this is just overall commentary from every time that I've stumbled across you, is you have a way of doing things that just makes it seem really not hard. And I think that what you're talking about, and I think about my experiences hiring my first half and the pressure and the things like that. And you're talking about, the household going back to one income and things like that. Typically, those are things that would, if not break, almost break most people. So what is it? What's in your head that allows you to just take on things that are really hard like that and not be so overwhelmed?
I think I have a really good way of being able to reframe things in my mind. So I could quite easily be really anxious and really stressed about something, and I do feel that for a minute, and I allow that because that then drives me forward. But then I reframe that and I put my problem-solving hat on. I think about ways that I can actually make it work, and therefore I just focus on that and do it. I don't really think about how I might fail or what's going to happen. It's just, here's a problem, here's a solution, just go for it and do it and see what happens. Because if you don't, or if I know that if I didn't, I was always going to regret that or wonder what if. And then, it's just not me to kind of fret and worry about stuff. I grew up in a household that didn't really have any money, living paycheck to paycheck, and a split family as well. So I had parents who had businesses, but they were more sole trader contractor type businesses. So I understood a bit about business and saw my parents kind of being go-getters to a point, as much as boomers probably, most boomers probably can. So I saw them, doing stuff and dabbling in a few things. So I understood that risk-taking was going to be a part of my life, and it was really natural for me to do that. So I guess that's just, in my brain is just, cool, problem, what's the solution, what are the options, and just go hard.
And I talk about this all the time with my guys, but often the worst case scenario is pretty close to where you start with most of that stuff. If someone, say, watching this episode, and we spoke about this a little bit more, so this might be a little bit before the episode, so this might be a nice segue, but you're talking about, say, someone making the jump from being employed to being self-employed. And I know when I kind of went through that process, I was like, right, okay, what is my current employment like? How much money am I making? Am I happy with the amount of money that I'm making? Am I content with the work that I'm doing? If I go and start my own thing, what's the worst case scenario? And you go, well, worst case scenario is I probably wind up back at a job with money that I'm not that happy with, not very fulfilled, and not really enjoying what I do.
Same spot that you were in then.
Exactly. And so I could just roll the arm, see what happens. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But currently I'm in the position that I would just wind up in if this doesn't work out. And maybe there's a few stressful weeks in the middle or whatever. But when you compare that to the potential upside, which is all of a sudden making money you are happy with and being fulfilled by your work and loving what you do and all those things, you're like, what would you be willing to give for a chance at getting to that point? And you're like, way more than 2 stressful weeks, the downside's not that bad. I think I see that a lot. And we even have these conversations internally. I'll be like, this product's broken. And they're like, well, you know, if we change it, this might happen, this might happen. I'm like, all those things are currently happening. That's because the product's broken. So let's change it. Because our worst case scenario is those things keep happening. It's, yeah.
And I guess a way that I've been able to just make things easy or make it look like I might be really stressy inside, but the way that I perceive myself or the way that I'm perceived by those around me is calm, and I've always been that way, even though inside I might be like screaming and yelling and having an internal meltdown. But that's just my brain processing and going to that kind of worst case scenario and then reframing that. Because in terms of stress and anxiety, if you go and think about what might be the worst case and then you solve that worst case and you say, well, if that happens, I would do X, or this is my solution for that, should that happen. And then when you work your way back up, that doesn't seem like a big deal anymore because you've sorted it, and therefore your worry, your anxiety, your stress about that situation should hopefully just kind of fade into the background and allow you to propel forward because you're not stuck in that. That's not pulling you down to stop you from taking action.
Yeah, and that is, and you mentioned that word scarcity mindset. Like that is the negative thing that is caused by a scarcity mindset is a lack of action. That's the biggest risk. Is like if you run your business in a way where you're like, I don't know where the next job's coming from, how can you then go hire someone? You can't, because you don't know where the next job's coming from. Whereas if you run your business in a way where you go, there are heaps of jobs out there, I just need to get my piece of them and we'll always be okay. You always get to, and you might miss, you might have the best employee you'd ever hire come across your desk, but you're too scared about the salary, so you don't pull the trigger. But that could have been something that changed you. Once again, it's the upside so much bigger than the potential downside.
Exactly.
I completely agree with that. Right, so you've got an employee, you're working from home. Obviously, that's a different situation to the one you're in now. What does the gap between now and then look like?
So that's still 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we worked from home for about 6 months and then put a porta-com on the driveway.
Yeah, nice.
Get out of the house a little bit.
Yeah.
By this time, my second daughter, she was about 1. So I started it when she was about 6 months old.
Yeah.
So she was 1, and we just needed to be out of the house because if I was at home trying to work when she was around, it was just a no-go.
Yeah.
At that time, too, I had my first intern from UTA come through. Back then it was CPIT.
Yeah.
And I needed more desk space. So that made sense. Just, next step, hire a porta-com, put it on the driveway.
Nice.
And he worked in the office when I wasn't with our staff member. And then he was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So I said to him, you've got 80 hours of internship. So it was, like 10 Fridays, I think we worked it out to be. After your 10 Fridays are finished, did you want to keep doing Fridays and I'll pay you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. And then I said, do you have any other days? Then it became Mondays and Fridays until he finished studying, and then he popped over full time. And again, it was very new in business. But come to think of it now, looking back, I was like, did I even really consider what I was doing? Probably not.
Yeah. It's better not to.
But would I have employed him and kept going had I known all the things?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from the porta-com on the driveway was about 6 months. That's maybe about a year or so after starting the business properly. Moved into our first office.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. How much, just to quickly touch on this as well on the way through, because I think this is really practical, and I had a conversation with 2 guys yesterday about this, and it looked like their mind had been blown. How valuable is the concept, especially when you're in early phases of something like an internship? So our internship model is we'll pay for half of your hours. So the intern can work 30, they can work 40, they can work 20. Yep. We'll pay them full rate for half of the hours they work. Half of them are for free. Yep. And with that, they get experience and we get some labour that's at a discounted rate. Being able to get extra hands early on and we still use interns every now and again when we're like, we really want to grow this product. We have a videography intern in right now where we're doing more video work. Yep. He'd approached us a couple of times about working with us. He was fresh, zero experience. We're like, cool, we'll sort your camera, we'll sort your computer, we'll sort all your software, all that sort of thing. This is how you worked. Being able to put extra people in really affordably early is so valuable.
Yeah, definitely. I'm quite lucky with the architecture school at UTA here in Canterbury in Christchurch. They have a diploma course and a degree course, bachelor's degree, and each of those courses they have an internship program that's a part of their course requirements. The diploma is 80 hours and the degree is 40. just because they're slightly swayed.
Yeah.
So they actually have to go out to industry and find their placements. Sometimes they have some of their tutors help them with who they might want to go and talk to.
Yeah.
So we generally always accept one of those or two of those each year.
Yeah.
It's really easy for us to do. We can set them up with a few tasks. They can just shadow us. We don't actually have to give them any work per se. And then that allows us to meet them, see who they are, and see if there's somebody that even wants to continue working with us, whether they fit into our mould, or whether or not we have any work to give them over the summer break. So we have one currently who did her internship with us this year, and then now she's back to do just the summer. We can't, really confirm that we can keep going with things.
Yeah.
So and paying her for those hours.
Yeah.
But it's on a particular project to help us with our systems behind the scenes to increase productivity and all of those kind of things. So that's where it's like working with the right people with the right expertise. Like, she doesn't have a lot, but what we're getting her to do actually allows her to learn in a really, really effective and efficient way. That's going to help set her up for her career too. So it's also thinking about how's it going to benefit us, what can we do, and how's it going to benefit her, and when she goes into full-time employment, if she chooses to do so.
Yeah, cool. How good. So wind up in your first office?
There for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
And then decided that being a workroom in a commercial area just wasn't really cutting it.
Yeah.
We were doing pretty good by then.
Yeah.
And I felt like I needed to spread my wings and find my own building. So again, just jump in without thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
And that was just post-COVID, which was, I don't know whether that was a blessing or not, but jumped into an office in Colombo Street. Was sharing the office with our engineer, who didn't stay for very long, and then I got lumped with all of the lease costs, which almost drowned us.
Yeah, nice.
But you live and you learn, right?
Yeah.
And that's these things that, sometimes I may, for a moment, regret a decision I've made in business. But then on the flip side, I'll look at it and say, well, what has that taught me?
Yeah.
And what have we, what do we do differently now? And what solutions have we put in place, and systems have we put in place to go, to make things better and to move on from that? And sometimes I'm actually quite, happy these things happened and that I went and jumped in and did these things because I've learnt what I've needed to learn through them.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes why I possibly may not question things or look into things as much as other people do, and I'm not as wary of. I take risks, and some people call me crazy, but I just do it, and then I learn. Because again, worst case, what's going to happen? Oh, I'll have to try and find someone else for the lease.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worst case, I have to pay for my personal thing, and then I got to try and find other work. Like, there's always solutions, and then there's always workarounds, and I think that's what really makes a difference. Yeah.
I saw this really good quote the other day, which was, pessimists sound smart, optimists make money. That was and I was like, that sums all of it up. It's like the person you talk to that is negative and that questions everything and that breaks down the validity of stuff, they always sound really intelligent. They never act on anything or have any upside. They're just sad and upset about shit all the time.
Because their appetite for risk is too low.
Yeah.
Because of all of that negativity, and I think there's a healthy level of that though. Like, we've got to have some of it to propel us forward, and we have to think about those things for a bit. But what the difference is that we don't sit on that entirely.
Yeah.
We allow those thoughts, we understand, we consider them, and we feel that for a moment. But we're more heavily on the optimistic side and take the risk, even though our brain still knows all that stuff in the background.
Yeah. You just have to shut it out sometimes. That's literally it. You're like this, and for me, I think it's probably just that, like, deep optimist where I'm like, maybe this will be really hard, but if I could pull this off, how cool would it be? Like, that's sort of where my brain goes. So I'm like, what if that worked out though? What if that thing that you want to do, or this happened, or this worked, or this, and with that, 3 or 4 things might go wrong, but then one goes right, and you're like, oh, that one that just went right offset the 3 or 4 that went wrong 10 times over.
And you've learned from the ones that went wrong.
Yeah.
So then you're already way ahead of where you were if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess thinking back to, what we've had to overcome too, so COVID wasn't too bad because we could work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So we just, everyone, the minute they announced lockdown, everyone just, we go to the office and we pick up our computers, literally, put them in our cars and go set up our home offices.
Yeah.
Obviously wasn't able to get any income in during that time, but we had work booked in that had been paid for. So we were actually able to keep busy and get some work done.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it was still hard, and yes, it was not a good time, but we survived that. I guess one of the biggest things that we've gone through would be the end of 22, beginning of 23 hit us really, really bad. I had Marley, so my third daughter. I had her at the very beginning of 22. Business was going great guns. We were doing really well. I was able to, especially, I'm not really worried too much about household expenses or the business, everything was just humming along really well. Although in hindsight we had a bit too much work and weren't quite able to deliver properly. So then we had some teething issues and things like that come into play where you can't keep up the quality of your offering when you oversaturate yourself. But again, chicken and egg, do you hire, do you not hire, how's it all looking? And then of course being in my late pregnancy and then having Marley in February 22, I literally worked from home and tried to keep the business afloat from home and my staff in the office. We're still here, so technically it worked. I don't think I did amazing at that. I think again, in hindsight, I would, if it happened, it's not happening again, but I would do things a lot differently. But have learnt so much through that phase of being at home, raising a newborn, still working.
Which also, I mean, and this is a little bit off the business thing, but it's relevant to the overall. I have a 5.5-month-old and almost 6-month-old, and it's hard enough on me with one, and Jen does majority of the heavy lifting, right, when it comes to the baby stuff, because she's just better at it than I am. I love it, and I try to be as involved in it as I can be because I really genuinely enjoy it. That's it. But as far as I kind of go as bath time, or I'll pull some weight by waking up in the middle of the night and giving them a bottle or whatever. But day in, day out, I'm not there worrying about them. I'm here worrying about what's going on here. And I was at work. We had Archie on the Sunday and I was at work on the Wednesday. I was able to just stay sunk into this. The amount of basically what I'm trying to get to is I don't know how you have 4 kids between you and TK, right? I think that's correct. And I'm sure that he's extremely helpful the same way as I would like to be. But how you do that plus run the architecture firm plus I can't actually make sense of it in my head.
Again, so 2022 was our hardest year. Up until Marley being born, we were doing great. And then I didn't have the presence, right? I wasn't maintaining the relationships with our clients, with our builders, with everyone that our source of work, basically. I just wasn't maintaining that because we had so much there. So it was this, tails getting chased, but so didn't get to us till the end of 22. All caught up to us, and end of 22 was a real shit show. We had a staff member, bless her, was amazing. She had some health issues and some personal issues, which meant that she wasn't doing her job properly and covered it all up. And when I unravelled it, there was a number of relationships that had been severed, and it was a pretty terrible time. We had, and through that, we lost quite a lot of revenue and quite a few customers. So I had to let her go. Also, 2 weeks after Marley was born, I had one of my team resign. She was amazing. She was like my wee prodigy and loved her to bits. She wanted to go to, got a good offer for going to a really big flash commercial high-end architecture firm. And at that point we were only kind of low to mid-range residential. We weren't doing that kind of work that she wanted to have experience in. So fair enough, but she had time. I remember her calling me, and I had Marley breastfeeding, and I had my laptop out on the couch working, and she rings me and tells me that she's resigning. And I just, for those few hours, the world was ending. You've got all those hormones running through, you're trying to run a business, you're doing everything you possibly can, and then someone you thought you could trust literally just shits on you. It wasn't, I took it as a personal attack to start with because all of those emotions and all those hormones are just so rampant, being 2 weeks postpartum. it was one of those things that like I really had to sit with everything that was coming up for me and what it was telling me and how I got through that. And TK was one of the biggest supports around that. Helping me go back to my mindset of, well, okay, this is happening. What do we do about it?
Yeah.
How do we solve that? What's going on? And that point, Marley was born, so then we had the other 3 children and trying to manage all of that. So there's so many hats and so many layers to everything that it's got a bit much.
Yeah.
Into 2022, when all that stuff kind of came up, we also had all of the stuff in the industry go down in terms of interest rates and building materials and building costs. So we had a number of projects just fall over at the end of 22 and the beginning of 23. Ones that we were at the stage of, about to do the consent documents for, which is where we have our biggest revenue, and just cancel. Coming into Christmas, and it's just like, how are we going to survive? What are we going to do? How are we going to get through? How are we going to keep the team?
Yeah.
And again, you kind of face with adversity. And at that point in time, I was just like, how many more knocks can I take?
Yeah.
How many more times am I just going to get knocked over and stand up? Those are like ping pong things. But you do. You just, time keeps ticking, and I have to always remind myself when things like that happen is the clock keeps moving.
Yeah.
I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and finding solutions to keep moving forward. But yeah, really shit times, but we're in a much different place now.
And I genuinely, I've had this conversation with a number of people, is I think that a lot of people think that winning at business is about how like intelligent you are or about how you can see the future or whatever. I think it's just resilience. I think that's the only thing. I think 98% of whether you succeed or not is how hard you're willing to push to get to the place that you want to go, and how many times, it's like what I said before with the like 3, 4, 5, 6 things go wrong, but the 7th thing is the one that has all the impact and moves you forward. It's like at the start of next year, we'll have 23 people in the team. And first off, I never actually thought we'd probably get this big, just being completely real with it. But I just don't even have time to take stock and be appreciative of the growth that we've done, because I'm like, this isn't what the end goal looks like. And continuing to hire these people when like I actually just, it would be really nice. Like the way the business performs financially, I'm all good. I don't need to keep going. I could just stay where we are and everything's fine. And like, it'll all be sorted. Everything that I want to do, like I get to drive a 911 every day. I get to do all these things. Like that's stuff that was like my wildest fucking dreams 6 years ago when I started it.
Your mission's overtaken that.
I know. And so this is that like resilience thing, is you need something big enough behind you pushing you forwards that when you're like, do I go and take on another $200,000 a year worth of salaries and go another round and try get even bigger again? And do I go and try these projects and do these things and do all the stuff that makes your life harder but is deeply fulfilling? What is it that's like pushing you through that? There's been a number of times we've done these things as well, like there's huge risk that it will go wrong. Like you hire expensive big person, it doesn't work. You do this, you do that, it doesn't work out. And so it's like, what is that thing that propels you forwards in that time? It's such an interesting thing to think about. I love getting to talk to people who've broken through that like roof, because I think of it as like levels every time, and you like go up a level and then you've got to get more resilient or tougher or smarter or whatever it is to move to the next one, next one. Getting to talk to people who are, and this has been my favorite thing about doing these episodes, is who are further, they have 100 employees or they have 200 employees or they exited a business for this much. Yeah, it's wicked to get insight into the way that their brains work and that sort of thing.
One of my good friends, amazing in business, again, exited for, they did really well.
Yeah.
She says to me, things are risky or that's a risk. And she's like, well, with risk comes reward. Yep. The greater the risk, the greater the reward may be, right?
Yeah.
So therefore it's like pushing through those boundaries to be like, well, I'm going to risk this because the reward's here. And I think that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners too, is be like, well, actually, I can see what I could achieve and I can see where I could go, and I've got to make these steps to make that happen. And yes, it's a risk, but that's the reward there.
Yeah.
And then the risk of not doing that is never going to get it anyway.
Yeah. It's
going to keep going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or stay still. Stay still and, do what?
Yeah. And like staying still is dying in business. That's the other thing that people don't consider enough, is like if you have a business that sits still for 5 years in a row, either someone's about to disrupt you and you're in a heap of trouble, or you're slowly creeping downhill. Like your margins are slowly getting squeezed. That's every company. Like you might sell tires, but it's like while you're staying still and not trying to dominate and take over more of the market, there's a company in China that's just figured out how to produce tires for half the price. It's about to come and sell them for half of what you can, and they're better quality.
Always other people there doing the same thing, if not and better than you. And if you don't move, then you get left behind. And I think when I look back at the 10 years in business so far, a lot of it has just been mucking through and getting through, but also that resilience kind of keeping me going, because it would have been, how many knockbacks would I have had before I just called it quits if I didn't have that resilience or that mindset of, actually wanting to achieve something and doing bigger and being bigger and being better. And I think it would have maybe only been one or two. For the standard person, or for if anyone else, or for people that I know, it would be like a couple of these knockbacks. They'd be like, "Oh, is that done?"
Do you see that a lot in architecture? I don't know. I don't know much about the smaller operators in the industry, but do you see a lot of people enter and then exit really quickly? Yeah, we get the same thing in marketing.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of guys who will do that to a scale, so they may. A lot of architecture firms will employ for scale for a project and then pull it back because it may be deemed too risky to keep those employees on other than their contract for that project. So lots of them are kind of like more hire and fiery, or the smaller guys might be by themselves and they might grow to 2 or 3 staff and then claw back as they need to for the work that's available to them.
Right.
At the moment, we've seen a few companies who've had 2 or 3 staff and now are just sole trading again. And it's just a sign of the times, but also maybe they just like to draw and to design and to make pretty buildings, which is awesome and amazing. So a lot of the time, architecture firms struggle with that quite a lot because they're not necessarily built for business. They're built for architecture. Designing beautiful homes and just having a good creative career, but the business side of stuff isn't taught really anywhere unless you go to a business business school,
but
or
even then,
do some papers.
Can you learn it not on the job?
No,
I don't think so.
Some fundamentals maybe.
But
nothing like actually doing it. So I think there's lots of room for improvement as to education around how you actually go about, like what mindset you need to run your business versus being the creative in the business and doing the work. And I think that's where a lot of architecture firms get stuck in, kind of like similar size to we are now, is like the director is trying to bring in all the work and trying to do all the work and has got some team there, but it's like that balance and how you get that to work and how you pull yourself away from drawing and designing enough to focus on growing the business. And that's where working with TK comes in.
I was just going to say, because there wouldn't be many architecture firms that would have someone sitting in that kind of business development type role. He's obviously a killer at it as well. That must be a nice change.
So this is also really interesting because he's seen me do business and do well sometimes and okay sometimes and really not okay other times, and he's had to watch that happen and not be fully involved in it and bail me out a few times or cover the costs for a while when I can't pay myself because shit's gone down. So he's seen all of that, and when we talk about going into business and resilience and why people may or may not go into business or feel like they can or can't, we've had this really interesting dynamic as a couple on TK being stuck in an employment situation and knowing that he's destined for bigger and wanting to do bigger and better, but that mindset shift of relying on a salary and being comfortable with the reliance on that's coming in each week. As long as I do my hours or meet my deliverables, I'm going to get paid. And the mindset is very scary to go, well, actually, I'm going to be in control of my income. Shit, like, I could royally F that up and then not be able to pay the mortgage, right? So we've often had a bit of a, I wouldn't say power struggle, but there's been tension in our relationship where I've been like, egging him on to push him to go out on his own and to do his own thing and to help me in the business and to, because I can see his potential and he can see that too. It's literally just time and place, situation in life. Like when we first started talking about it, we were mortgaged to the hilts.
Yeah.
So that would be a huge risk, and probably one that was tipped the scales of the risk versus, gain factor. So we didn't do it then. But we've always talked about it and have been building a plan. And part of that plan was to go, okay, well, this big house that we have, why do we have this house?
Yeah.
From when we bought it to when we sold it, actually, we're paying extra $500 a week in just an interest.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're just pissing it down the drain.
Yeah.
And we decided that was enough, that we couldn't go where we wanted to go with our lives and with our business if we kept the mortgage, if we kept the house. So we made what lots of people questioned us as a risky move, even that, to sell the house and cash out of it and have money in the bank to have some flexibility for a while we transition TK out of his employment and bring him into the firm full time. He's a director and shareholder, but this will be the first time that he's going to be in the business full time.
Yeah.
We had a taste of that while he was recovering from surgery.
Yeah.
So, it's a really interesting dynamic where you see the potential in yourself even, but it's trying to find the right time, but is there ever a right time? And trying to work out how you make that move, especially when you have 4 children and a mortgage and all of these things at play. And being really ballsy about decisions and going, actually, why would we want to keep a house? Do we keep a house just because it's the key to owning a home?
Yeah.
Or do we put ourselves and our children first and say, actually, this looks to some as a backward step, but to us we know that that's going to allow us to go and do bigger and better things and to grow as a couple and to grow our business.
And how cool is it when you get, so I for example didn't buy a house. I mean, we're building at the moment. We own a place up north, but I didn't buy a house, and I only own that because Jen bought it and was like unconditionally committed to buying it, and then she got pregnant, and I was like, we have to settle this thing because you don't actually just get to walk away from those. So that's the only reason we have a house at the moment. And we're building one. We've got one under contract with a client that we've worked with for years that we're really excited about buying, and that's kind of it. But I'm 6.5 years into this. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a property until Jen's one in December last year, so say a year ago. And now we're building. That's a really cool thing that we're excited for. But I probably wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for Jen and Archie. Like, that's a Jen and Archie driven decision, not one. It takes a special kind of person to not care about what the market or like general people think about you and bet on yourself beyond, like, to a point where you're willing to have to go out and kind of fight for a little bit. Like, I had conversations with people and they're like, you're wearing a Rolex and you don't own a house. And I'm like, well, I can get my head around buying that. Yeah. And I'm like, that's fine. It makes sense. I get what you're saying. But I don't want a house.
Yep.
And
Your priorities.
Yeah. And they're like, why? And I was like, well, because the return on my money when I put it back into the company and I go and hire another person or I go and do something like that is higher than what a house would make me in the next year. And they're like, oh, well, it's your future. I'm like, no, Digital Simple is my future. That's my future.
You're not investing, right?
Yeah.
You're not just investing in your property and then having a salaried income.
Yeah.
You're investing in your business.
Yeah.
Which is going to give you, most likely, the biggest dividend 10 times over than putting it in bricks and mortar and it's sucking everything dry from you.
And, like, don't get me wrong, I probably should have put more back into the business and spend less money on dumb shit. Like, their base point was right.
But you learned from that, right?
Yeah. But
I did that in 21 when things were going really well. I was like, I'm going to buy my first brand new car because I've never done that before and I really want a brand new car and stuff it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I did. And then it took a year to arrive, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then when mid-2022 came around, I was like, I don't think I can afford this anymore. But I was so deep into it, I was like, I'm fucking having that car and I'm going to make it work.
Yeah.
And if I have it for a few months and then I can't afford it, I'll sell it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
do you still own it?
I do still own it.
What did you buy?
I managed to get through.
Nice.
Just a mum car, like a new Kia Sorento.
Yeah.
A 7-seater one.
Yeah.
But it was the only cost-effective plug-in hybrid at the time.
Yeah.
And they weren't second-hand versions because they only brought them out in end of 21 was the first model. So 22, I got a 22 version. There was nothing else. I was like, I need a plug-in hybrid. Like, in my business sustainability mentality, I was like, well, that makes sense. Also, shit, we have 4 children.
It needs to be 7 seats. Yeah.
So that was my rationale around it.
You don't need to justify it to me. I make, or ideally,
bloody car.
yeah.
We're buying a brand new car again, are we? I'm like, nope, because I've done it once, and that's all I need to do.
I've only ever done it one time too. I drunkenly at dinner, my friend told me about how he just ordered one of the Raptors when they went to the V6, and I was like, I'll buy one of those. And he's like, no. And so I was like, no, I'll buy one of those. So I also paid cash for it. And so I've never felt like such a successful person in my life. Then it was the third one, I think, that they delivered out of Hutchison Ford in Christchurch. It's black. The Grocott Freya guys, who are good friends of mine and clients, they both got black ones as well.
So all 3 of you are rocking up.
And we're all like in our mid-20s, and like we all,
so cool.
Oh man, it was cool. And like there was just this feeling about picking it up where I was like, man, I'm the real deal. Like this is, and then I sold it because I was like, I'm not the real deal. That was a terrible use of cash. But yeah.
You also felt that for the moment.
Yeah, it was
you
awesome.
Did that,
yeah.
And you got to experience that, and then you go, cool, I've done that. I'll move on now. Take it off. Done.
Yeah. Take it off. I don't think I'll wind up buying. I mean, look, it's not going to be in the next week, but I'll buy some fun cars, but they won't be brand new. I don't think I've got that sort of. Yeah.
TK would be like, no more brand new cars.
No,
that's fine.
There's actually no gain.
We're not really car people anyway, but in saying that, it was, you do things, you learn from them, you have that experience, and all good.
And they don't kill you.
No, exactly.
So I mean, there's about a million. I'm loving a lot about what you're saying. I think that we spoke a little bit before about your passion towards people if they feel like they want to take the leap, taking that leap, and about how that sort of works. I think a lot of what you said kind of reaffirms that, like, it's not the end of the world. It's really funny how sometimes some negative things, like you mentioned TK's surgery, help to give you that nudge because they give you a little taste of it as well. I mean, mine, I don't know when I would have started Digital Simple, but I'd hit a point where I wasn't comfortable at the place that I was working at anymore. And so I was like, well, I know I'm leaving. And so I didn't know what that would mean I would go and do, but I knew I wasn't going to stay there. And then I was just having a coffee with a mate, and he was just like, why don't you just go do it for yourself? And then he's like, what do you make? And he's like, well, you need this many clients, and you're sort of, can you go get that many clients? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, go then.
So someone broke it down for you enough to kind of like lift the blinds over it to be like, actually, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can see this kind of thing, and I've had a few conversations like you had with that person, where I can see what they're really, really good at and what they love doing, and I can see how a business could work really well and actually really easy for them. But unless they're ready and willing to hear and listen to that, like actually hear it, it's not just listen and go, oh, it's too hard. They're not going to do anything about it. But it's one of those passion points is that I feel like so many people in my life could be doing business, but it's just a sticking point as to there's that kind of self-belief mindset isn't there, or it's that stigma of business is hard and it's scary and it's all these things that it's actually not. Or I've got to have all of these things in place first. I've got to have the website. I've got to have this. I've got to know exactly what I'm doing. I've got to... No. You just start.
Yeah.
Get your first sale somehow. Like, it can be super simple and super easy. And I guess when I talk to people, I'm trying to kind of offer little snippets of advice here and there if they're ready and wanting to take it. But, I feel like I'm just a big stickler for... cutting the status quo in half and doing things that I want to do because I want to do them, not because society says to do them.
Yeah.
And that's where a business works really well, because you can actually, streamline your life and have the freedom and flexibility that you've always dreamed of wanting. But do you want to dream it enough to take that step?
Yeah. I'm stuck on that selling the big house to dump money. Like, I love that shit so much. Like, that is, if there's one thing that I like about, I've always been the person, I sold this property that I'd bought and I owned. And I remember I'd put like a lot of deposit and stuff like that in, and I'd banked $200,000. It was like $202,000 or something got transferred to me afterwards. And like, I've never seen that many numbers in a bank account ever in my life. I'm like, oh my God. And I had a million things that I wanted to do. And instead of doing any of them, I wired it all into my company's checking account. like that was it. I was like, that's what I want to do with this money. That's where I want to put my cash. That's what I care about. And then I did that. This was going into, I think it was 2022 as well. And we got shit whipped. And I literally, that money just got absorbed. Like I got nothing from it. It was just like, it went to like hires that didn't work and tax bills and stuff. Like it just got so good. Yeah, it's still kicking. Yeah. And like, I love that. And I remember my buddy was like, when I was telling him about what was going on with the sale and things like that, he was like, the most you thing you could do would be wire all that money into your company's checking account and just go, we're going to grow next year. And I remember going home after having that conversation with him, and I was like, he's so fucking right. That's exactly what I should do. Like I've gone from looking at ADR rates on Trade Me to being like, nah, I'm just gonna put all the gunpowder in the place that I care about the most. So yeah.
And that's similar to TK and I. You know, especially TK can see quite clearly that not having a mortgage right now and having that money in the bank means that we can invest in the business. We can, pay more bills. We can take the kids on holiday. We can actually do a lot more with that money and grow that money faster and have freedom and flexibility with our lives, be able to pull TK out of employment. Whether had we stayed in the bricks and mortar, we would not be anywhere near where we are at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's where we're both super excited for next year and the year after, especially. I think 25 and 26 are going to be game changers for us. This year's been amazing. Still had some really hard times within that, but we have been able to diversify the company or start diversifying the company a lot. And most of what happened in 22 and 23 was due to being kind of mostly in low to mid residential sector in terms of architectural work.
Yeah.
And that's where most of all of the economical stuff hit the hardest.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to do beautiful big high-end buildings and commercial projects and community work and things, but never was able to actually know where to go to get that work. Like again, you know that it's there. You see, you know there's the pull of all that work. Yeah. There's enough work for everybody who's going to try and get it right.
Yeah.
And I was stuck in just trying to keep things afloat, just trying to pay the bills and just trying to make sure I hit my monthly targets. That I was really not able to spend the time in finding the work that I really wanted to get. So again, just like looping back, and then being really like a bit begrudged about, but I just want to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't quite seem to bring it in. And that's where TK's experience and his skill set and mindset have a big part to play in actually being able to sit down with someone who has a completely different way of thinking about something, more from a financial and business and sales mindset, whether, as I said before, most designers and architects are creatives.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily business people. And I managed to run the business and keep it afloat, but I don't think I did a very, very good job at it.
Yeah.
In relation to getting the work done and being creative. So
you consider yourself a creative like that? Yeah, sure. And because you have and I remember this from our first meeting, there's a nonchalant confidence that comes across when you're talking about architecture stuff that's and I can see why that would also have a really big impact in sales, because I think that you would create a really safe feeling environment. Like if someone came in and you're like, here's my project, you'd be like, yeah, okay. It's like we talked about at the start, that whole doesn't seem like it shakes you or stresses you or anything in any way, shape or form. Yeah. But yeah, there's for us, me getting, and I'm the best person at selling digital simple because I'm the most passionate, and I actually come from a sales background as well.
In terms of day-to-day sales, being in front of people is where I get the sales. So in terms of converting the lead into a sale, I'm really good at that, because as you just said, the personal aspect of who I am and how I come across and how I can make people feel comfortable and secure and build the trust and the rapport really, really quickly, and add value in an initial meeting quite quick. So that side of stuff I'm really, really good at. It's more the business and the financials and all of that stuff that just... Also, when you don't have someone looking after that and you're trying to do it all, you're putting too many hats on all at once that you can only fit so many hats on before one pops off, and then you pop that one back on, but then something else pops off. Yeah. So it's just this never-ending cycle of looping around, and while I'm good at sales, then I'm not doing the work because I'm selling so much. So it's all these things.
And that's where you get stuck in that sell, deliver, and it's purgatory, because like as soon as you focus on delivering, all the sales stop, and then as soon as you focus on sales, delivery goes to shit, and then you're just like up, down, up, down, up, down. I did that for years. And years and years. And it was only when, and funnily enough, I actually took sales off my plate first and then completely neglected delivery. And then, like, I've gone through cycles of what I'm doing at the moment. This would be the first time where I feel like we're starting to find our footing in both. It's probably with sales being stronger than delivery, but it's a never-ending game. I don't think it's something you ever. Yeah. Your standards will just rise. Like as soon as you get better, your standards will increase, and then you'll just need more. Yeah.
And then there'll be an issue that pops up, and then you change that, or there'll be a small delivery issue, and you fix that, and then we're a bit light on our sales this month. What are we doing there? And you just keep that balance and that bit here, bit there, as needed to over all the different areas of business.
Yeah. It's a fun game, eh? Never ending.
The other way.
Yeah. So with one thing that I do want to touch on, and probably just because I think it's interesting for people, is so how do you balance I can only imagine Jen's worked here for a little bit while she was pregnant because she moved down from Auckland and it was easier than putting her in a job or something like that. I can only imagine what it's like trying to balance the whole having a relationship with someone plus running a business with that person. What are you and TK doing that's allowing that to stay fluid? And then how do you work 4 children in the mix with that as well? And what does that look like?
Yeah, really interesting question. And again, it's reasonably fresh for us. Like TK spent time observing me in the business and seeing me melt down and completely fall over, and him having to pick up the pieces and, sit me back down and everything's going to be all good and here's some advice and stuff, to being in it and being able to see where the weaknesses are and start to plug in those spots. We also this year changed accountant to an advisory accountant who's in Auckland and has a podcast too. And we've been very fortunate to become one of his clients, and we went through his 90-day, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a 90-day advisory program where you start looking at your numbers, you start looking at all sorts of stuff, but it's more like a financially based business coaching model, really. And TK loves this guy. They get on really well. It's awesome.
We've done some work with him in the past. I know who you're talking about. He's a good dude.
Very good. So that's been game changing for us in the business. And the reason I say to talk about him is because one of the aspects that one of the activities he got us to do was to work out like what is my love and hate list in the business, like the tasks, the daily things, and what am I really good at and what am I shit at. And then TK to do the same thing, and then to see where we had gaps, where we didn't have anything, and things that where we all one-sided and were we missing a whole lot of the business, or and it worked out that we're really well balanced. So I think that's become really apparent and really easy quickly, because we know what I'm good at doing and where my value is in the business, and we can quickly really easily see where TK's skill set and what he likes and dislikes in the business to balance us both out really well. And I guess it's one of those things that's always changing and it's always developing and moving around, because we as humans are like that, right? You can kind of have the best plan in the world, but unless you have flexibility, it's just going to hit the fan. So again, kind of just like starting that process of TK taking things away from me that are on my hate list or that I'm not good at list or that actually isn't worth my time to do, and looking at ways that he can take those away from me so that I can focus on these things, and then he can take those things. And at the moment it's a bit tricky because he's still in his employment till the end of Jan. So at the moment we only really have evenings to talk. And
I was going to ask if you keep evenings sacred.
I get home and we put the kids to bed, and then I just want to blow about and watch half an hour TV. Before, you pretty much only have half an hour to an hour before you need to go to bed once everything's sorted. The house is sorted, the kids are all in bed asleep, and then we'll take you on to still talk business. And I love that and appreciate his enthusiasm, and I think it's amazing. My brain really struggles to get online with that when that's happening at the moment. And some days we're really good and we have time to communicate during the day. Other times we don't. today I'm all over the show, so literally don't have a minute to even look at my phone really.
Yeah.
And we know that we need to keep the comms up, and we need to kind of keep snowballing stuff and to keep talking about things.
Yeah.
And when we have a week or two that we don't, we can definitely see the impact of that on the business.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's a little bit of a struggle as to, I've got to really push myself to allow us time to talk about business in the evenings when I'm on struggle street hard at that point in time.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And like, I don't know if, because this tends to be a trait of people who are like this, but I'm quite introverted naturally. So like I've developed this extroverted persona that's all charismatic and that's excited to be around people and all those things. But it drains my energy tank at a rate of knots. Like it steals from my cup aggressively. And so then by the time I get home, even though Jen's my favorite person in the world to be around, I don't want to be around anyone. And so like I kind of push and dig real deep to get through bath time so I can hang out with Arch a little bit. I can take a little bit of pressure off Jen, and then I sort of put Arch down, and then I kind of get to the couch and I'm like, nah. Like last night Jen got home and I was battling with some stuff and she's like, oh, so do you want to talk about what you're struggling with? And I was like, no. It's tomorrow's problem now. Yeah.
And it's interesting because TK does that too. Like, so we have some similarities in that. Like, I feel like I'm very much like you in that sense. But then there'll be times where TK is similar, where he's had a big day or he's been dealing with some stuff at work, and then we get through the kids' stuff, and then again it's like, no, we're not going to talk about that today because right now this is me time, and I'm going to switch off, and I actually don't want to think about that right now.
Yeah.
And like getting used to the fact that that's also okay.
Yeah.
Because we can often come into the mindset of like, oh, but we need to talk about it. We need to unpack things as they come, and like, while that can be important in the right time and space, it's not a necessity all the time. And sometimes it's actually worth parking it and sleeping on something before you talk about it, or, having those conversations another time.
Often sleeping on it fixes half of the problems anyway, because you're just like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. I'll just move on. I was probably being a little bit dramatic, and you just carry on. I'm a bit like that. Sort of like I'll be real frustrated for 6 hours, then I'm like, probably didn't need to be that frustrated, and then I just move on. Yeah.
And it's finding the things also, like when I find myself like in overwhelm or frustration during the day, being able to be aware of that happening and go, oh, okay, I need to do something about that now.
Yeah.
Take myself for a walk, or just go home for a bit, or, go for a coffee, or kind of try and just kind of just push through that, or like kind of sideswipe it, so that you kind of actually acknowledge what's happening and why it's happening, but then you can do something about it and move on from it, rather than letting it because you can get so, I feel like sometimes you can just get so, just allow it to happen, and then it builds up and it can be there for days or weeks sometimes.
Yeah. Every business owner's gone through a period, or every business owner that's grown a company to a certain point has gone through a period of like just waking up every day and your ears are ringing, and if there's so much pressure in your head, you're like, I think it might explode, and the noise, like neck tension, and just like, and I've done long patches, like months and months of just hell through this process at points. And you talked about like the end of 22, and it probably sounds like the middle of my 22, I'd say, was like that, where it was just like, we'd opened up an Auckland office that was definitely overreaching. I'd left Christchurch essentially to my team that was going backwards at a rate of knots while I wasn't involved. Like all the stuff is going on at the same time, and there's so much, you're so overwhelmed that you can't sleep it off. Like I'm waking up in the middle of the night like having panic attacks and shit, like full blown just hell. And then you get through it, obviously, like you do, but I think everyone who's listening to this who's been there can just relate to that and get what that's like. Absolutely. It's just brutal.
Yeah, for me it's the kind of burnout and the overwhelm can sneak out really quickly. Like I'll be feeling fine, and like likes of TK will be able to see it kind of brewing, and I'll be all happy days, and then boom, I can't go to bed the next day. Yeah, I've got a migraine. Yeah, I can't move, or sometimes with migraines I might vomit too. Yeah. And that was really, those are kind of my big signs that I need to take time, and I need to look at what I'm doing and rejig my time, my days, my weeks, whatever, and build some balance back in. Yeah. And thankfully I haven't had one of those kind of moments for a while now. And I do think that that's been a big reason is because of TK's, input into the business, and having that pressure shared.
Yeah.
Because I have been used to taking it all on board myself, and then to the outside world I look, peaceful and calm and all good, but in the inside I'm like freaking the fuck out. And then it's not till it gets to the point where I feel like it's too bad, and then I've got to talk about it to someone, and then I'll melt down, and then I'll have a big mentee bee about it, and have a couple of days in bed, and then
happens.
Get back up and keep going. But I think that we're on the up with that, and nice. I feel like I've built more awareness around all of those things, and tried to balance things out. And I guess like the kids situation too. Yes, we have 4 kids, but the older 3 we have week on, week off. Yeah. So we do have times where we only have one child at home. Yeah. It used to be that the older 3 were week on, week off, like hard and fast, and they were all at the same time. Yeah. So what we struggled with then was we had 1 week we'd have 4 children, and it would be like manic crazy. Yeah. Then the next week we'd only have Marley, and you'd be like, oh, this is like amazing. Yeah. As much as you love all the kids, it's just that. But what happened was you go from 1 child to 4, and that dynamic shift was just so much for your brain to handle. Yeah. Just mentally, it was such a challenge to go from 1 to 4 and get used to the 4. And then when you just got used to the 4 again, that'd be gone. Yeah. So it was this living in this heightened environment of like, fight or flight all the time, because it's such a big shift. Yeah. So we've actually changed that now, where the kids are still week on, week off, but they're staggered. Yeah. And my girls are having big issues with being to the spaces 24/7. They have a bit of a personality clash. So, and then they were bouncing from house to house, from a stress house to a stress house, because the same thing was happening on the other end. So now what we do is we stagger them, so that we only, like, if you look at a fortnight, we only have 3 nights a fortnight where we only have Marley. Yeah, and we only have 3 nights a fortnight where we have all 4 together. Yeah, it makes sense. So we have a bit more balance across the field. It makes life a lot more complicated in terms of who have we got. Yeah. Like most nights we've got at least 2 kids at home. Yeah. But it works. Yeah, it works better. So that's given us a little bit more balance. Mm-hmm. Every day we wake up and we're like, cool, who's doing what? How are we going to get through today? Yeah. As in like the logistical issues of a family of 6, or 7, because Tuku's mum always lives with us. Yeah. So sometimes we have to consider her and what she's up to. Yeah. Yeah. And then we have a dog and a cat. Yeah. So you just keep adding into it. So sometimes it's, you might plan, okay, well, there might be a general sense of, TK's going to do that part of school run, because we've got 1 out in school ring, Eura, 2 go to school at Avonhead, and then Marley goes to preschool in town. Yeah, right. So we also have the dynamic of, okay, we've got to get Coop out to, we've got to get him out there. We've got to get the girls over here. We've got to get, who's doing what, how's that working, who's got what on that day. Yeah. So it's just a matter of, we have a loose plan, and then sometimes it's the night before or the morning of. We may change it up depending on what's happening, and we just have to be fluid and we have to be flexible. And things often change last minute. Yeah. And we just know that this is just a season in our lives, and
it's just what being a parent is, right?
We get on and we just do it, and we make it happen. Yeah. And it's all about the flexibility. Like yesterday, TK was meant to go out to ring Euro and do that school run, and I was doing this school run, and he said, oh, actually, I've just got this thing I need to sort for the next hour. I'm going to be home late. I'll get Marley. Can you go out to North Canterbury? Mm-hmm. I'm like, actually, yes, I can right now. Yeah. And just moving things around as you need to make things work. Yeah. Because life has to be flexible, and if we're too rigid, then we end up causing ourselves a whole lot of issues. Yeah. And that does has its challenges all the time. But again, it's only for a sort of a time here and there, and it's this is one of the seasons in our lives. Yeah. And then we have to keep reminding ourselves that one day we won't have this season and we'll wish it back.
Me and Jim were talking about the other day, we want 4. And so we were like, and we'll review after each one as to how we're tracking, but we want 4. And I'm like, it's going to be challenging to do, but I think that there's like a dinner when you're 60 and there's 20 people there and they're all children's partners / children's kids, and it's a big long table and it's all lovely. Mm-hmm. And that's the next season, and that's the reason why you put up with this one, and so Absolutely. It's just the way that it works. Yeah.
And I think there's definitely you can kind of see similarities in family life versus business too. Yeah. Like the seasonality of things and the the resilience and having to push through the hard times, and knowing the hard times is just there as part of life.
Yeah.
And knowing that the good comes out of it, and you're going to have the good mixed in with the hard and the bad all the time.
Yeah.
And that's just the dichotomy of life all the time, right? Isn't it? It's you can have a great thing happen 1 minute and then a terrible thing happen the next.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
So what are you? And I'm just a little time conscious because we're sort of well past the hour mark. So talk to me about CA architecture next year. Who you guys are, who are these new customer groups you're targeting, what's your USP, what are you doing in the market, what is it that's kind of shaking things up next year?
I think that we have a really, so my kind of personality trait, as you mentioned before, around helping people feel like safe and confident and, happy about working with us, that in itself is quite a unique thing. Being female, being the business owner, and being someone who can build, a relationship with a client really, really quickly, and work to their best interest. Like, I've always got the client's best interest at heart, and always trying to find the right solutions for them. Always trying to add value. Always trying to it's not just about the plans and the design. It's about a lot more of the process and all these other things that come into play. And I think people really understand that, and when I talk to them especially, and really appreciate that. And that delves into all different parts of the business. So when we're talking about renovations and extensions, it's how can we add value to that property, and how can we look at it in a few different modalities and ways to actually, it's not just what we're putting into the building, but we look at the values, we look at equity gains, we look at all sorts of different things to actually add lots of layers of value to clients. New builds, similar, but being able to be creative and being able to understand what they want on a deeper level, not just hear them on the surface of what they actually want, but understanding, the deeper needs and requirements, and being able to question in a nice way, and being able to build a really, really great solution for someone that actually works. And then when we get into our community work, so that's more of our mission focus in terms of we really want to be the company that people come to for their commercial projects, for their community projects, whether that be on a commercial setting or a residential setting, in terms of like commercial, residential community housing projects and things, because we can think about things holistically, because we understand, because we work to understand, we just have such an amazing way that we can formulate a big package around people and help them through a process and care for them from day one. That's much further than just the plans, as I said before. And I think that's where the biggest difference is that we're not there just for the plans. Like, we're there to go understand actually what are you trying to achieve, how can we do that, what are your options, and then be able to kind of like ring fence them and go, well, here's how we can make that happen, here's how we can help you with finance, here's what the end value is going to be like, here's the equity add that we can have here, and actually take them from pre-design all the way through to the end build, and actually be a part of that the whole way through. And I guess just really focusing on who we want to work with and why we want to work with them. And that's really kind of where we're at the moment, is to really kind of niche into those different areas and to understand what projects we want and why we want them. And then stem from there.
Cool. Nice. And what are some of the projects you've worked on? I mean, I know I mentioned a few at the start that you liked the most, and what were those processes like with those people?
That's a really interesting question, and I guess that brings me to like the creative process and flexibility. Like, we can have a system and a process till the cows come home, but essentially every project, every client, every site is so different that we have to be fluid and flexible in the way that we design, because everyone's going to have different needs. So when we talk about like man cave, it's completely different, completely bonkers, and the way that process happened will probably never happen again.
That is a really cool project.
That's a creative project. A fun one, a good one. So that was we did the architectural work on that, and then Hierarchy Group did the interior fit out of that. So that was a really amazing collaboration project, and it worked so well, and the client is amazing, and he has the most epic man cave you've ever seen in your life out of
Yeah.
it.
It's
And
on your website.
through the most amazing opening party too, by the way.
Oh, I can only imagine. Based on the house, I can only imagine. What the opening
It's
party-
actually an extension. Do you believe that?
Ah.
Yeah. It's extended on the original house because it's in a rural property in Lincoln. It still kind of borders on Lincoln, and the planning rules meant that we weren't actually able to have a second dwelling on that property. That was going to be able to house a man cave because the second or minor dwelling size is quite small. So the only way that we could get around that for planning rules was to make it an extension instead.
And so you were involved in that process, is like
Yeah.
navigating the planning rules and doing all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so here's the house, here's what I want to do. Well, it kind of has to go around here, so just make it happen. And he's just like, yeah. Well, I said, but it has to be extension of the house because there's no other way that we can get it through council otherwise. So yeah, it's technically attached to the existing house, which is now dwarfed by this man cave.
Yeah.
It's like completely dwarfs it. It turns its back to it. It looks very out of place. But that's sometimes the beauty of it too, right? You know, it's so obnoxiously different.
Yeah.
And it uses the same colour palette. The house has been painted to match the man cave, but essentially it's a 90s 2-story house with double windows. Quite standard,
Yeah.
quite normal, decent sized house. But then this man cave is 11 metres up to the apex, and it's a full gable the whole length, and outrageous.
Yeah.
And it's attached by an annex to the back of the old garage.
What's an annex, sorry?
So there's like a wee building piece that attaches the house to the man cave, like
Yeah.
a wee linkway, the
Yeah.
annex thing. Yeah, which is actually just a laundry and a toilet and a back door and some cupboards and a hallway through the middle
But it's
to
technically an
link them
extension.
together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That one was really interesting because we got that project through the builder. So the client had a friend that was a builder, and they contacted us, and we got the work there.
Yeah, cool.
Sometimes it's as simple as that, and you can get an amazing opportunity. So
Yeah.
I'm forever grateful for that one.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like it's almost a once-in-a-career type of project, but you never know.
You never know. Someone listening might want a real cool man cave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if it's only half the size or a quarter of the size or an eighth of the size, it will still be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can, definitely. And now we know exactly what goes into these buildings. And it was obviously residential, but it's commercial in scale. Like it's a full commercial structure in there.
Yeah.
But it's his house.
It's one that's honestly, if you're listening to this, it's worth, because if you go to the CA Architecture websites, there is one of the examples. It's honestly worth going and having a look at. It's pretty crazy.
Even Google Extreme Man Cave, and there's some cool videos. Hierarchy Group also have a cool video on their Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
There's been quite a few articles and videos and things done too. So definitely, obviously, go to a website.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can Google the thing, and
Yeah.
quite a few articles, videos come up.
Nice. How have you found, just out of curiosity, how have you found the whole bring? I know we've had some success, especially from like a content perspective and like some pretty cool reach and things like that.
Yeah.
Have you found bringing social media into what you do, and have you found, like, because obviously it draws a little bit of extra attention to you guys, you're putting yourself out there a little bit more. Are you enjoying that process? What challenges are you finding with it?
I am enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting because social media is something that I've never really gotten into.
Yeah.
I've posted a few things here and there and kept up. Obviously, always had social media, but haven't really posted to it. Haven't really engaged much with social media. I didn't really see it too much as a tool for us, if that made sense. There's been a bit of a mind shift change recently, but also understanding that we, especially with TK's mindset and skill set too, and understanding and having it reflected back to me that I am the face of the business, and people want to work with me, and they like to work with me, and they want to build a relationship and build that with me. And when I get in front of people, it's relatively simple and easy to be able to, as long as everything checks out, to have them on board as a client.
Yeah.
I don't find it difficult. So therefore it was why would we not want to build brand awareness?
Yeah, and do that one-to-many rather than one-to-one. Yeah.
And I'm all about education. So I've done before podcasts were a big thing, I did lots of webinars, especially through COVID. I hosted webinars, in the lounge in the evenings and things like that. Been on a few podcasts and stuff. Did my passive house studies. I'm really, really hot on education around a few things that if I feel a bit hot about something, I will just try and educate and to speak to those things. So the more people that I can educate and speak to around even like, you know, how business owners can do things, or how homeowners might like to think about something, or what I wish people knew more about, or what I say in initial client meetings to build confidence and rapport with people, like those things, or how I add value, those kind of things, the more I can spread that, the better.
Yep.
And that's where it became quite clear that we needed to push on social media and to get my face out there.
Yeah.
And it became a thing where TK was like, we're doing it and you have to put your face out there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, great, okay,
And
the decision's done.
Yeah, I think I've put 400 reels up on Instagram or something under my personal brand, like not under Digital Symbol, but under me personally. And there's this podcast, and there's all these things, and you never like it more. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it's, you just get more climatized to it. Yeah. That's all that it is.
It becomes a part of your day, part of your week, a part of the business.
Yeah. And it has like huge upsides, like you don't even like you'll see it, you know, and I know that we had some, like a cool lead come through Instagram off the back of some of the reels that we've been doing, and some cool things like that happen. But like those reels, even just in themselves and the reach that they've gotten off them and the way that it gets your personality across, and like it's not even something I can take credit for, because it was really you and Siobhan that came up with the whole thing and built it all out together, and I didn't expect her to grab it and turn it into what, like, but it's so perfect. It's so, like, you see it and I'm like, that's exactly what you should be doing. I didn't even think about it like that, but that's exactly what you should be doing.
No one else is doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where, again, we have that point of difference, is that generally speaking, lots of architects and designers are a lot more introverted.
Yeah.
And just want to design. So being on camera or being in front of people is just not something that they want to do. I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with it either, but I knew I had to. I knew that I could do it. And yeah, it's been really fun so far.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying it. I just need to get better at being consistent with my posting.
Yeah.
So I'll take that on the chin myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're getting lots of really good feedback. Kind of wherever TK and I go, we're always getting comments. Oh, I keep seeing you popping up on Instagram, or, you know, even one person said to TK, oh, open my phone and all they see is your wife. They're quite funny. And we're just like, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Cool. I've got a, and I haven't prepared you for this at all. I've got a closing question that I ask every guest that comes on this podcast. The closing question is, if you could go back all the way to the start, so think all the way back to before hiring your first employee in the house, before all that sort of stuff, you could do one thing differently throughout your career, what would it be and why?
One thing differently. I think I might struggle with that one, because I take all of those things as, you know, the things that I probably would do differently. Then I actually think about them and quite positively and go, well, actually, I learned so much from that, so what would I change?
Yeah.
I think I would probably respect business more.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't necessarily put on a pedestal, but I would probably want to pause a little bit and to think about things a little bit more before I made big decisions, and just run with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I think there's definitely lots of value in not stopping what you're doing, but taking a moment to breathe and to think and to look at things from a few different perspectives and angles to make sure that it's the right thing to do, or that it's, well, you're never going to get that answer if it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But just to understand it from different point of views and perspectives, or from different areas, to really kind of understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Being a bit more rounded with that, but
yeah, it's a good
again,
answer.
Just keep going.
Yeah, keep doing bits.
Yeah.
And that is definitely the thing that I'm taking away from this, is just that, like, don't operate in a mindset of scarcity. Like that, I mean, I'm still stuck on that, like, pessimist sound smart, optimist make money quote. That's probably the theme that comes out of this.
But there's a healthy part of that you need to.
In the middle.
Yeah. Well, you know, if there's a scale, you want to kind of be like, that's the middle. You want to be that side.
Optimistic.
Yeah. You don't want to be too optimistic.
Yeah.
Then you're not looking at any of that stuff that you need to look at, but you don't want to be on that side, because then you're going to make any moves.
Yeah, you do. And I seem to be stumbling across this a little bit currently, where you do actually see people who err on this. I think if you're too optimistic with no pessimism, you can almost come across a little bit mental. Like, delusional would be like the word I'd use. Like, I have a couple of examples of stuff that I've seen recently, and I've been like, you're fucking mental. there is no way that that's how your brain actually works. Is, you know, like, do you have no receptor for like anything? So yeah, I think that's good advice. Just sitting in the right point in the scale.
Absolutely.
Cool. Hey, if someone's listened and they want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do so?
Jump online.
Yeah.
Emails. casey@caarch.co.nz. Go to our website, caarchitecture.co.nz. And phone numbers and emails are right there.
Cool. Nice. And obviously check out your reels on Instagram.
Yeah,
if you get a second
actually,
as well.
like us and follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
Then click on the website,
Yeah.
find the email address with the phone number, and then make contact.
Yeah, cool. Hey, thank you so much for coming. That was really enjoyable. I love, my favorite thing about this is getting to sit down with people and hear their stories, because you, like, even going through our process through onboarding and all that sort of thing, you never actually get to sit down and go, so how did you start, and go the whole way through it. I really thoroughly enjoyed that, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. If you've made it all the way to this point, make sure that you're following us on social medias. We're uploading clips and things like that. Subscribe to us. If you aren't watching on Spotify, you can also watch on YouTube if you feel like that. And yeah, just want to thank you for listening. I will see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.